Live right here on this Monday on the early line on SportsGrid, but we look back on Elite 8 Sunday in the 2024 men's NCAA tournament. Elite 8 weekend as well to set the stage for Final Four Saturday night out in Phoenix, Arizona, now just 5 days away. A huge game yesterday, DRS, in the Midwest Regional Final out in Detroit between the top two seeds in that portion of the bracket. Number 1, Purdue, number 2, Tennessee. Oh, the narratives and the storylines entering this matchup. Tennessee looking for its first ever Final Four appearance in program history. A proud basketball program in West Lafayette, Purdue, looking for its first trip to a Final Four since 1980. In more than 4 decades. Matt Painter, one of the best coaches in the sport, trying to get there for the first time ever. Rick Barnes, trying to lead the Vols there for the first time since he was the head coach of the Texas Longhorns in 2003. So with all of those stakes, with all of the narratives, Purdue comes through in a huge game yesterday in a big way. 72-66. The Boilermakers cover as a pregame 3.5-point favorite. A closing total at 148.5 stays under. On one side, you had Zach Eady. 40 points, 16 rebounds for the Boilers. On the other side, it was Dalton Connect. 37 of Tennessee's 66 points. 2 first-team All-Americans duking it out for a spot in the Final Four. It was theater yesterday on a Sunday afternoon in the Motor City, but Purdue gets the better of Tennessee, and they're back into a Final Four for the first time in more than 4 decades.
A couple things I liked here from the Purdue Boilermakers. Obviously, number one, they won the basketball game against a quality opponent and a great defensive opponent in Tennessee. But also, if you're just looking at the box score, you look at Tennessee, 11 of 26 from three-point range, 42% above their seasonal average. You take a look at the Purdue Boilermakers, who are having a very good tournament from three-point range, shot 3 of 15 for only 20%. From the free throw line, got there 33 times, only made 63% as a team, and they still won this basketball game, which included them being down double digits right before the break. Let's just say Tennessee would have hung on for the final couple minutes of that first half and it was still a double-digit lead. That would have been really interesting to see how Purdue was going to come out for the second half. But they went into the lead, sort of inflated as you take a look at Tennessee being deflated because, what just happened here? We had a 10-point. We could have extended that 10-point lead. Instead, we don't even have the lead at the break. But you saw what we've known all year long and, quite frankly, for the past couple of years. Zach Eady is dominant. The thing I loved about Purdue is they know where their bread is buttered. 3-point shot not working late in the game, just continuously throw it down to Eady. Good things are going to happen. Either he's going to convert or get to the free throw line or help somebody else get an easy bucket layup and or coming off, crashing that, opposite side of the rim, getting that rebound if he did miss here. Loved what I saw at Purdue. This is a team, Ben, that we trusted to get to the Final Four, and now they're in the Final Four, and they look really good right now. Even when not playing their best basketball, still able to beat top 10 teams like Tennessee. That's impressive.
Purdue is the best three-point shooting team in the nation. They average 41% from deep this year and have been sensational in the first 3 rounds of this big dance. They were 3 of 15 yesterday and still won by 6. Now, if you're a non-ball knower, you might have watched Zach Eady yesterday and said, that guy's tall. What are these refs calling? These are terrible foul calls. Please watch the game and understand the skill level that it takes, how he positions himself, and why Purdue runs their offense through the big 7-4 Eady. He forces officials to call those foul calls. And you can really not argue a lot of the fouls that were whistled yesterday. Oh, he's in the paint always for 3 seconds. No, he's not. He steps out and reestablishes. And he had a 40-point and 16-rebound performance. The first 40-point, 15-rebound, 60% field goal performance since 1968, when a legendary Houston Cougar, Elvin Hayes, did the same against Loyola Chicago. And Donnie, entering the game yesterday, Eady's points prop, 23.5. Connect's points prop, 21.5 for Tennessee. We expected both of the stars to step up on the most significant stage of the season, and they delivered. Connect, 37 of Tennessee's 66 points. Eady, 40 of Purdue's 72. The first time in NCAA tournament history on the men's side, we have seen 2 players combine to score 50% or more of their team's offensive production. And what a game it was yesterday in the Motor City.
It was great to watch. It was. And Dalton Connect was every bit as good as advertised yesterday in that game. 37 minutes, 14 of 31. You could just see the translation to the NBA game because most people say, well, Eady's going to go be a pro, but how effective can you be if you're not a step-out three-point shooting center like most people are now at this point? You take a look at Connect. His game is ready. The three-point shot, the down-low game, getting to the rim. He's the total package. It would have been nice to see him move on to get to the Final Four to get that ultimate praise. But quite frankly, Purdue was the better team yesterday, and Zach Eady was the better player over Dalton Connect. Now, shout out Dalton Connect, because late in that game, I did have a odds boost here from the FanDuel Sportsbook, which carried over from Saturday, which needed Tennessee just to stay within 9.5 points, and this was getting away late. But you know what my boy Connect did? Instead of jacking up three-point shots a minute ago, he kept getting to the rim and getting layups. So fantastic stuff overall. He's a great player, but Purdue was just a better team yesterday.
The one time he did not get to the rim was when Zach Eady swatted his shot out of there for maybe what was his biggest play of the game, despite a 40-point performance on the offensive end. So the redemption tour continues for the Boilermakers, now to a Final Four for the first time in more than 40 years. Of course, last year, upset as a number 1 seed against a 16 seed in Fairleigh Dickinson. The only other time we had seen that in NCAA tournament history was Virginia in 2018. UVA won a national championship in 2019. Each and every step, Purdue has matched that right on track. Now, the nightcap yesterday on Elite 8 Sunday. Not necessarily even a nightcap game, tipped at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. South Regional Final between the 4 seed in that portion of the bracket, Duke, and the 11 seed, NC State. An all-ACC affair. The rubber match between these two teams, the third game of the year, all 3 games coming in the last 3.5 weeks. And NC State takes it. And NC State will take their first trip to a Final Four since 1983. 76-64, the final. The Wolfpack have now won 9 straight games dating back to the start of the ACC tournament, in which they earned that automatic berth to the NCAA tournament, and they have covered in 7 of those 9 games. Each cover, DRS, outright as an underdog. The Wolfpack win outright yesterday as a 7.5-point dog behind 49 combined points from the man you see on your screen, DJ Burns Jr., and the other guy right there, DJ Horn for NC State.
Yeah, they were tremendous. That's what we need, a 1-2 punch, players stepping up in the biggest moments, which you saw DJ Burns Jr. do. However, on the opposite side, Filipowski fouled out earlier in that game in the second half. And the reason he was really frustrated. Now, sometimes you take a look at games and how they progress, where the calls aren't going your way. He got fouled on a 3-point shot, didn't get the call, sort of threw the basketball basically over the backboard when he got hacked on the elbow and it went up, and he didn't get that call. And then he got called for an offensive foul. So things were going his direction late in that game. But you can't take anything away from NC State. I don't know where this run, was looking like it was going to come from. 5 straight days in 5 straight games in the ACC tournament and getting through them, and then playing great basketball in the NCAA tournament. Also, we talk about adversity. Purdue hit it in the first half and had the lead by the break. You take a look at Duke, who was terrible in the first half, goes, man, we got a 6-point lead still, even though we're not playing great basketball, and NC State only has 21 points. And then NC State kicks it into gear in the second half and drops 55 points. It was a fun basketball game to watch all the way through, but Duke just ran out of gas in that game, and NC State was the better team. Momentum continues into the Final Four for the Wolfpack now.
NC State wins outright as a 7.5-point dog. Total of 141.5. Barely stays under. NC State has won all 4 games in the Big Dance. They won all 5 in the ACC tournament in D.C. You have seen the clip by now. Michael O'Connell banking one off the glass in the semifinal on a Friday night against Virginia after UVA missed a free throw to allow it. This NC State team was down at the half to an 8-24 Louisville team in the 10-15 game to open up the ACC tournament. When you find that magic and momentum in the month of March, it can carry over. 29 points from DJ Burns Jr., 20 points from DJ Horn yesterday, and the upset over Duke. Elite 8 Saturday night. A recap up next. Elite 8 Saturday night, a recap here on the early line as well on a Monday morning. To look back on the weekend, that was the final weekend in the month of March, but the madness does not stop. 5 days away from Final Four Saturday in Phoenix. There is one word to describe Connecticut in the last 2 NCAA tournaments. It is dominance. I'm not sure that word even truly displays what we are seeing here or surmises what we have seen in the last two big dances for UConn. When you look at this Huskies team, DRS, there might not be a word in the English vocabulary to truly sum up what we are seeing in these 10 games, of course, last year capping off with a national championship. In a Final Four, or in a game for a Final Four spot, Connecticut wins by 25 points, 77-52 over Illinois. The one seed in the East region with a home floor type advantage in Boston hammers the Illini in the second half and goes on a 30-0 run from the final 2 minutes of the first half well into the second as well. 25-point win for Dan Hurley's Huskies. They cover as an 8.5-point favorite.
And so many times you just look at the box score and say, how did this happen? Because you figured it'd be a close game. Why? UConn went 3 of 17 from the three-point line, which means they were probably taking too many three-point shots and forcing it up, and yet they still won by close to 30 points. It's outrageous how talented they are and how many different ways that they can beat you, which includes their own defense by holding the most efficient, maybe the best offense in college basketball to 25% shooting as a team, which included 26% from three-point range. Superstars that were really getting whatever they wanted, like Terrence Shannon Jr. 2 of 12 from the field, only 8 total points in this game. It was dominant all the way through, but we were seeing things that we're not used to seeing, like UConn just going on an absolute tear and run to blow the doors off the building here and stretch out the Fighting Illini. I was saying to myself, like, if somebody's going to knock off UConn, it's got to be like a team like Illinois that goes, you know what? We don't care how good you are defensively or offensively. We have the best offense. We can take control of this game, which is what Illinois had been doing. And they were systematically dismantled starting at the end of the first half right through to the second half for a 49-29 second half and an easy victory for UConn. Who stands in the way? Who's going to beat them? Doesn't look like anybody, but my goodness, if they are smashing teams like the Fighting Illini, good luck moving forward, even if it is Purdue and or NC State.
And, Donnie, that's what we're talking about, right? You're trying to point to a style of play, to a team that follows that system somewhere in the big dance. Now, of course, only 4 teams remaining, but we've been doing that since the round of 64, since the start of this second weekend. Who plays that style? Is there a matchup advantage that one team in the tourney has to potentially even keep a game close against Connecticut? If they do, I'm not sure what it is, and I'm not sure which school that would be, even with the likes of Zach Eady and the Purdue Boilermakers, or maybe DJ Burns Jr. or NC State. We'll talk about Alabama in just a moment, because 10 wins in the last 2 NCAA tournaments for Connecticut. They are a perfect 10-0 against the spread, covering by an average margin of 14 points per game. Think about that. They were an 8.5-point favorite against the Illini. They won by 25. So there's the expected outcome that Connecticut should win by double digits, and they're blowing the doors off of those numbers that the odds makers and the algorithms are setting as well. The average margin of victory in this NCAA tournament is 25.5 points per game. It is north of 23 points per game in the last 2 trips to the big dance. Pure dominance for Connecticut. It truly is unlike anything we have seen in quite some time. And, Donnie, to think about what UConn has done in their hunt for a second consecutive national championship, trying to be the first repeat title winners in the NCAA tournament on the men's side since Florida accomplished that feat back in 2006 and 07. And this stat from our producer, Joe Frizo: UConn is the first team as a reigning champ to reach the Final Four. Only one other defending champion has even seen the second weekend in the Sweet 16. That was Duke back in 2016. To win again in a single elimination tournament described as madness speaks to the consistency, the dominance, and the success that has been sustained by Dan Hurley's Huskies.
And they got a deep bench. Like, they can do it so many different ways, as you pointed out. You want to focus just on defense, they're very good at that. You want to focus on offense, they can do it from all levels, down low, inside game, wing guys, three-point shooting. They have it all from multiple different positions, because it's not like, okay, you come into this basketball game, we have to shut a certain player down. Their entire starting 5 is extremely balanced. Now, even if you take a look at the previous game they played against the Illini, it didn't look all that impressive. 10 points, 22, 2, 5, 11. But then you saw the bench. You got a couple guys scoring double digits with Diarra coming off the bench. I mean, mean, it was really fun to watch them play, but I kept finding myself to say, am I watching them versus like Stetson here in the second half? You should be able to run away with basketball games like they ran away with it. It's just overall impressive where you say the Final Four is coming up. Who's going to knock them off? They're going to have a tough opponent in the Final Four and then another tough opponent in the final. And it doesn't seem like it even phases UConn. We talked about this on Selection Sunday. The minute we saw these teams going like, my goodness, UConn. This is why I didn't pick UConn. The price point was factoring in UConn was the best team. But the 6 games that they would play would be incredibly tough here. And they're just dicing every single team they play. So we'll see what happens in the final. Change of venue, not on the East Coast. Maybe that makes a difference. But I think we're hoping and wishing somebody can give UConn a good game right now, as opposed to saying, you know what? They're just the best team. It doesn't matter where they play. They're going to smash their opponent.
Just keep it close, stay within a number, maybe even cover, even if Connecticut does win outright. We talked about the East region, how much of a gauntlet it was, the most difficult portion of the bracket by far. The top 6 seeds all ranked inside the top 18, according to Kenneth Pomeroy. The top 4 teams all in the top 10, and yet UConn made its way through with a relatively easy breeze. Maybe Auburn in the round of 16 would have been a tougher test than San Diego State, but you got to beat the smart kids in the Yale Bulldogs to even see that. Connecticut has been on a warpath, and they will continue to be. Nightcap on Elite 8 Saturday night out in Los Angeles, West Regional Final. Not the college football playoff, but the Elite 8. Alabama versus Clemson. And for the first time in program history, the Crimson Tide have reached a Final Four. 89-82 the victory for Alabama over the Tigers. They win and cover as a 3.5-point favorite. And despite only 67 points combined, 35-32 at the halftime break, Alabama was in front despite trailing by double digits early in the opening half. We saw 104 points as the offense picked it up in the final 20 minutes to go over a pregame total of 163 and a hook.
Yeah, they really picked up in the second half. This is what we expected, a really fun game here. Clemson, again, attack of the ACC, just didn't have enough to take down the Alabama Crimson Tide because you take a look at their scoring. We know they love to shoot the three-point shot. Shot 36 of them and went over their regular season average, shooting 44% as a team. That was impressive, which included Mark Sears, 7 of 14 from the three-point line. But it was a late surge by Clemson to try to get that back in them, which finished with Gerard III, 5 out of 10 from three-point range and 19 points. So I hit myself a little parlay in that game. But this was one of the games that you anticipated coming into, saying, what are we actually going to get out of Clemson? Almost the same feeling that you get out of NC State. Because for me, Clemson was a better team regular season-wise than NC State was. But it's like, okay, who are their superstars? It's just a balanced attack. They can get clutch three-point shooting. They can get that down-low presence here. And they got it all in that game, but they just couldn't match up. This was the theory coming in against Alabama in the SEC tournament and then into March Madness. It's like, we expect one of those down performances by Alabama where they just don't show up and clank, shoot 43s and make 7 of them and go away. Now they're in the Final Four here. They are a fun team to watch, and we have an awesome, even if the odds makers don't think so, I can't wait to handicap this UConn-Alabama game as we head into the Final Four. It's supposed to be a blow-up, but the ultimate equalizer, Ben, I always say, if you're going to be an underdog, you better fire from three-point range, and if you can make your average or more, you should be able to cover. Good times ahead here in the Final Four, but a great win by Alabama.
Listen, UConn doesn't make it easy to shoot from 3, but we'll talk about that in the coming days, in the 5 days until we get to Final Four Saturday night out in Phoenix. We'll take an early look at those early lines here on the early line in our second hour. But when you think about what Alabama did to Clemson, a good Tigers defense, but does allow you to shoot the 3 if you want it. And believe me, Alabama wants it and needs it from 3. 62 field goal attempts for Alabama as a team, 36 coming from three-point range. 52% of their shots on Saturday came from deep. They shoot about 47% of their overall field goal attempts this year from three-point range. And Mark Sears, the outstanding Alabama guard, started the game 0 of 6 from deep. He finished making 7 of his final 8 triples for a game-high 23 points. The Crimson Tide can score. Third most efficient offense in the country, the highest scoring team in college basketball at better than 90 points per game. They're not great defensively. They're outside of the top 100 in KenPom, but they have done enough here in the NCAA tournament to see their first Final Four in program history. And a shout out to Nate Oates here in this spot. because he has orchestrated Alabama to 4 consecutive NCAA tournament appearances in their first ever Final Four. 111 years for the men's basketball program, DRS, for the Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa. Now, the big dance hasn't been around for all 111 years, but for Alabama to reach its first Final Four, a historic weekend for the Tide.
Certainly. Some saying now it's a basketball school and not a football school, and a basketball conference, not a football conference is what I'm hearing out here. But also credit the Alabama Crimson Tide, because they really attacked the transfer portal, and look where it's found them here. Some schools out there, we're going to grow them within and we're going to teach them the program. Nonsense here. Get the best players there. Great coaches will make them assimilate on the court. That was fantastic stuff out of Alabama. Looking forward to the next round in the Final Four.